The Leafs go 500 on the week, extending their win streak to 4. In fact, this has been the longest win streak since the beginning of the season. Let's just hope it doesn't mean we're cursed for the next month. I am so sorry. Welcome to the penalty box. Hope you're enjoying the All-Star break. Still not over this darn cold, but I've got 2 weeks to cover, so here we go, straight into the games. I'm just going to cover the main important points of the games because recaps of each one would be way too long. Anyway, Leafs lose 7-0 to the New York Rangers. The thing that sucks the most about this lopsided loss is that it was to the New York Rangers. I mean, if we were going to get blown out, I would be more okay with it if it was one of the elite teams of the league. I mean teams like Vancouver, Philadelphia, hell, I would have even taken Tampa Bay, but the Rangers? I'm not even going to give a list of who scored because then I would have to punch someone. And unfortunately, you're the only one here. So I'll just sum it up with this. Luke Schenn looked like he was the only one trying out there. And Bozak won 9 out of 15 faceoffs. And now I will banish this game from my memory. Next on the docket, Leafs win 5-2 against the Anaheim Ducks. The biggest positive I noticed right off the bat was the crushing hit delivered by Dion Phaneuf on Matt Beleskey in the first when the Leafs were down 1-0. That was a game changer. You're coming off a 7-0 shellacking, you're down by 1 in the first, then you deliver a gigantic hit, and the momentum swings. That's the kind of thing Wendell was famous for. Then, the Leafs rally to take the Ducks 5-2. And 2 important things happened in this game at exactly the same moment in the third. Grabowski, as he scores the Leafs' 5th goal of the game to put it way out of reach, gets his 2nd of the game and becomes the first Leaf to reach 20 this season. On that same goal, MacArthur got the assist and becomes the first Leaf to get 40 points this season. Talk about surprises, who would have been able to predict this? Also, great way to rebound from a 7-0 loss. Because the Leafs just physically destroyed Anaheim. Phaneuf with the game changer on Beleskey, Colby Armstrong laying out Spiza, and even Bozak getting into it with a big hit behind the net on one of Bozak's best outings of the season. And that's a guy in desperate need of some positives. Another positive, winning 15 out of 18 faceoffs. Not bad. And a big positive came from this game for the goaltending, which is in also need of a light at the end of this dark tunnel. Giguère getting the win against his former team the season after they shipped him out of town. And he also beat the guy who stole his job. That's got to be pretty sweet for him. Moving on, coming off a great high, the Leafs lose 4-1 to the Washington Capitals. Tim Brent got the only goal for the Leafs, scoring for the first time since the beginning of the season. And in spite of the box score, the Leafs weren't outplayed that bad in my opinion. But that's little consolation when you're facing another big fat loss on a team that desperately needs a win. One win, they desperately need 10. And what a time for Ovechkin to break out of his slump, netting a hat trick. Another big part of this game for the Caps, third stringer Braden Holtby just robbing the Leafs blind. Kinda reminds me of another third stringer I know. Quickly pounding through, the Leafs roll into Carolina to lose 6-4. Phaneuf continues to be physical after the obliteration of Beleskey completely destroys Tuomo Ruutu at center ice. This is exactly what I loved about Phaneuf when he was in Calgary and why I was so stoked when he was traded here. This guy has the power to just break you with a body check. So it's great to see that he's finally getting that aspect of his game back. Another thing that was awesome was Clark MacArthur getting into a fight with Chad LaRose, just throwing him around the ice. LaRose was a complete ragdoll. And what became the biggest story of the game was Tim Gleason just punching Kuhlman in the face during a scrum at the end of the first period. Here's what happened. After the whistle blows, the Leafs and Canes get into a shoving match, and Kuhlman and Gleason meet up, shoving back and forth. Kuhlman throws a couple of jabs, and Gleason just drops the gloves and completely lays him out, and Kuhlman would not return. And people were calling it a sucker punch, and believe me, as much as I love Kuhlman, I'm not so sure about that. Because Kuhlman, even though he's not a fighter, is throwing glove-on punches in Gleason's direction. What's he supposed to do? Stand there and let Kuhlman land a few to his face? I can't fault Gleason for what he did too much. Maybe he overreacted. Maybe he should have thrown more of a jab instead of a haymaker. But Kuhlman shouldn't have been getting physical with a guy that's twice his size. Moving on to more positive things, Tim Brent got 2 goals in this game, one of them shorthanded, and now has 3 goals in back-to-back games. In fact, it's the same situation as the beginning of the season. And that's great to see from a guy like Brent. A guy who spent a load of time on the Marlies comes up and is a great bottom 6 blue-collar forward. And to see him score, it just brings that warm, fuzzy feeling to your heart. And moving on, the Leafs roll into the All-Star break with a 2-0 loss to Tampa Bay. And watching this game, the Leafs were dog-tired after a physical game in Carolina. They got outshot 17-4 in the first, which means that they got off less than a quarter of Tampa Bay's shot total that period. Reimer did what he could, but how do you stop one of the best teams in the league, especially when they are outshooting you by a 4-1 margin? To his and the Leafs' credit, they held Stamkos pointless. Great. But the Lightning came out of the first up 2-0. The Leafs raised the level of their play throughout the rest of the game, and by the end of it were almost matching the Lightning in shots, and they held the Lightning scoreless in the second and third period, but they just could not beat Dwayne Rollison. James Reimer stopped 29 out of 31 shots in this one, raising his save percentage to .933. The Leafs were shut out for the 8th time this season, and this game just proves one thing. Take a look at something for me, because one of the greatest areas of controversy for this team has been goaltending. We have what some people call crummy goaltending, we get beat. Then we had what those same people said was amazing goaltending, and we got beat. The point is, the goalies aren't the problem here. They need offensive support. You can't win if you don't score. So that's where we are now. 2 general trends I noticed in the past 2 weeks. First, real shortly, is, well, Phaneuf's refinding his physical play. Hooray. And to further examine the goaltending situation, Gustafsson and Jaguar, well, they haven't looked good. And by not good, I mean pretty bad. And a lot of people are calling for a goaltender trade, but I don't know. Because earlier in the season, they both played solidly, and the Leafs would have won a lot more games if the rest of the team had played at that level. And honestly, what do you expect to fetch for an aging Jaguar with only a few months left on his contract? And if you're hoping we trade Gustafsson, all I can say is, really? 2 seasons in the NHL in which he showed some promise and progress, and already you want him shipped out of town? People are screaming for Reimer to be recalled. We still lost. I mean, Reimer played amazingly well, but it could have been a hot streak. These things happen, like Semyon Varlamov playing insanely well for Washington in the postseason 2 years ago, then almost loses his job to Jose 3 or more the next season, and then almost loses it again to Neuver this season. I think Reimer is great and will be an NHL goalie someday soon, and he's probably going to be a very good one. But you cannot rush this guy to the show. It could ruin his confidence and his career. Need more proof? Just ask Justin Pogge. Anyway, that's all I got for you this week. The Leafs slipping closer and closer to being mathematically eliminated. Not to be too much of a downer, I'll see you next week.